Welcome in everybody to our latest live stream. Today it is Sunday, the 14th of December, 2025. My name is Carey Holzman, and today, well, still a blank bench in front of me as we continue to await other products to review, repair, upgrade, diagnose, etc. However, the good news is we do have items coming, and we will have some stuff for you this coming week. So that's the good news. The bad news is that as far as anything new and exciting goes, I don't really have anything to show you today, except if there's anything you'd like to see or any questions you'd like to ask. And we want to remind you that this holiday season, you know, it's a prime time for people to get taken advantage of. A lot of places that just kind of appear online that were never there before to sell things they never ship, just to grab that money from somebody who is perhaps not paying as much of attention because you feel you got a lot going on, very distracted, and it can get very easy to be ripped off this year. So apart from sticking to known retailers, avoiding those Facebook ads at all costs, and making sure that you're aware that our friends over at VIP-URCDKEys want to make sure that if it comes to, or when it comes to getting a Windows or a Microsoft Office license, that you can buy legitimate, real licenses from them. They've been around, they're going to be around. They're there to support you for up to 6 months after the purchase. And their website, which we have links for, it looks like this. And as you can see there, we've got a Windows 11 Pro. And we have a coupon code. So whatever that price is at the time you check it, with the exchange rates changing all the time, put the coupon code of Carey, C-A-R-E-Y, for an additional 25% off. And then you'll just check out and you'll get an email that explains, if you don't already have Office or Windows, they'll explain how to get it from Microsoft for free. They're not sending it to you directly. You will get that from Microsoft legitimately. And then you'll install it, and then you will activate it. And their instructions explain all that as part of your receipt after purchase. If you run into any problems, they're there to help you. And if for any reason you're not satisfied with that help, in the rare occurrence you would even need it to begin with, you reach out to us directly, because the buck stops with me. And I can assure you, if that was something that happened regularly where people were having to reach out to me after making a purchase, whatever that item is, we wouldn't be promoting it anymore. Now, I want to remind you that this is not a commission-based link. I am not paid whether or not you buy a license or you don't, or how often. This is really there for you guys to make sure that you, as reputable people, are dealing with a reputable company. This is as much for them as it is for you, in the sense that they get people trying to scam them all the time. You get people trying to scam you all the time. You guys have something in common. You don't want to pay too much. You don't want to be ripped off. And they don't want to have to charge you more because they have to absorb costs from thieves and scammers. So the best level justice here is that we know we're at the same motivation, why they're selling and why you're buying. And so in theory, everything should go 100% smoothly, with nobody having to look over their shoulder after the transaction is ended. So just so you know, it's there for you. We keep those links in our video notes all year round. So wait till you need it to buy it. That way you get that 6 months of support starting on that day. I'd hate for you to buy it and then hoard it, and then a year later you try to use it and have a problem. If that were to happen, they'll still do their best to help you, but that's really a suspicious behavior that scammers like to pull, where they're, oh, I don't have my receipt, or I don't, you know, I try and take something back to Best Buy after 30 days and let me know how that goes for you. There's a reason for it, and it has a lot to do with scammers and thieves. So while you're trying to defend yourself against being taken, so are all the retailers. Amazon does the same, Best Buy. It's no different. Okay, and if you have any questions or concerns, you just reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And let me say hello to everybody, and I want to say also thank you to our friend Buster and Mark Gaines, who sent Amazon gift cards in prior to the show starting in lieu of a super chat. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. We have an update from our friend Andy with the Nano KVM Pro. Turns out The reason why Andy wasn't able to get the updates is news to me, but effectively, when they came out with version 1.2.4 of the app on the Nano KVM Pro, it broke time synchronization on Wi-Fi only, so that the clock wouldn't set right. And then version 1.2.5 fixed that, and then there was a version 1.2.6, and Andy, who runs his on Wi-Fi only, his time went out of sync after getting 1.2.4, but he was unable to get 1.2.5 or 1.2.6. So that was a puzzle. So just for grins, Andy, ran a cable to the router, plugged it in, plugged the Nano KVM Pro wired temporarily into the router, and it updated fine. So apparently, whatever 1.2.4, whatever that update did, it broke some communication, not only with the time synchronization on the Wi-Fi, but also with the further, checking for updates through the Wi-Fi. This is how programmers learn, right? They realize they made a mistake, they corrected it, and it should never ever happen again because they know better now. And that is why SpaceX has been able to launch and land, 550 landings now of a first stage Falcon rocket. But the first 4 blew up. Once you figure out what went wrong, then you can make it consistently better from that point forward. And at least if there's any other failure, it won't be from the same cause. So that's the benefit of being able to say, okay, there is a problem here. It's not just you. They've recognized it, they've addressed it, and now we continue to evolve. And so any other future problems should be different ones. And that's just the process of a new product coming out and going through the regular evolution of both hardware and software changes, which is often accompanied by supporting a Kickstarter project where you want to be early. You're going to get a product that's probably not really going to be ready 100% for about a year. That's normal, and that's true for any brand new product that just comes out. Doesn't matter if it's a car, some new gadget, something you bought on Amazon that just got released this week. I suppose when an author writes a book, they very rarely will go back and correct the book. So if you want to buy a book on day one, it's probably going to be the same book a year later. But with technology, it often advances during its first year after being introduced to the public. Even our app, the Windows 11 Optimizer, we found some items in the way people are using it and the way that the optimizer works that we hadn't been able to even consider until it was brought to our attention. And now the app is so much better today than it was when we first introduced it to you guys 6 weeks ago. And I'm telling you, by the 1st of January, this thing is going to be super polished. That's my prediction. And now that we've got everything on it, as far as we know, polished, we're still looking to add a couple more features. Like I'm thinking of adding like a BitLocker notification, just to tell you if BitLocker's on or off. Not to recommend it on or off, just to give you the status, just so you know, because some people don't know they've got encryption turned on. And then maybe also a check for system restore to see if that's turned on or turned off. And then again, not to make a recommendation one way or another, but to just give you a heads up. These may be important to you, and that'll just continue to add more value to the optimizer. So Nick is working on that, and I think he's got a couple other ideas. I just don't want the optimizer to get really large and overwhelming with too many bells, whistles, and features, because then it becomes, it's just too overwhelming for people. So we want to keep it simple, but we want to keep it extraordinarily, Swiss Army knife, with the sense of having every common tool. They did make a Swiss Army knife that's about this big, and it has like 1,000 tools. I don't know how many tools it has, 120 tools. And it's like this big. You're not going to carry this thing around. It's a novelty. So what we're trying to do is make a Swiss Army knife, which is just a little bit of the necessities and maybe just a little dab of extra. And it's a difficult balance because there's so many things that we can put in there optionally. But we also want to give room to add things as Windows updates make some changes. We may still want a few more little slots, if you will, for addressing different changes that may be upcoming in Windows 11 in the future that we might need a heads up on or might prefer to have on or off. Like Quick machine recovery would be an example that didn't exist last year, and I highly recommend you turn it on. Things like just the regular storage manager, having that turned on and set on a schedule. There's no harm in that. There's no reason to not turn that on. And these were items that didn't exist before that exist now. Storage manager's been out quite a while, but quick machine recovery or Windows recall, stuff like that were newly introduced features that you may really want to know about or be reminded about the current status. And again, there's the optimal way that I would have it, but in certain things like encryption or system restore, we just want to give you the heads up so you can at least be aware of it and have it to the way you prefer it. But if it's out of sight and out of mind, you may not find out till it's too late that your system restore has been off the whole time. Or you might not find out till it's too late that your system was encrypted with BitLocker and you had no idea. This is why this tool is going to be so useful. And it's already very useful, and it's already really rock solid, but we're not done with it yet. So for everybody that purchased the tool and supported us here back in November, we can't thank you enough, because it's because of you this tool is getting better faster. I just got an update to OBS. We're now on version 32.0.4. This is my first time using this new version. Usually when OBS comes out with a new version, it's rock solid. The betas, not so much. But you know, OBS has been out for years and they continue to still pump out new versions of it. This is the open broadcast software that I use to connect the cameras and the microphone and the computers to, so we can broadcast to you. It's completely free and open source, and it doesn't get updates very often, maybe every 2 months or so, but it's slowly but surely, you know, expanding and becoming more robust and having new features. And so I can't tell you specifically what 3204 does, but it seems like it's working. And anytime that you have a machine or a piece of software that you don't use very frequently, but it has an update, I strongly recommend you grab that update. Al in the chat says, any advice? I have Corsair LPX 32 gig DDR4 memory. I want to increase it to 3600. Well, I want to know why you want to increase it. What do you think that's going to do? You know, there's a big misunderstanding in how RAM works, and especially in the enthusiast and home user community. Basically, you're saying, I've got a car that does 160 miles an hour, maximum speed on the speedometer. But this other version of the same car goes to 185 on the speedometer. They both run the same speed up until you hit 160 miles an hour. If you're not driving 160, then you're not going to be hitting... Uh-oh, we got something here. Oh, that already arrived today.
It did.
Let me see that, please. We just had a package delivered here. And this is from our friends at Nemo. They said they'd be sending this to us. Remember I said I had stuff coming this week? Well, it's already here. That's super fantastic. This is a very high-end mini PC. The Nemo AI Max Plus 395. What is this thing, like $2,500 or something? It's, believe it or not, a steal of a price for what you get, at least from the specs that I've read about it. And we're going to very much be looking forward to testing this bad boy out. The Nemo AI Max Plus 395 mini PC. You can Google it if you want to learn more. Wi-Fi 7, 350 watt built-in power supply. Yeah, that's cool. I bet you they're going to want this back too.
Who knows?
That's all right.
They didn't say that. Okay.
Anyway, so I would be curious what you think is going to happen when you go from 3200 to 3600 megahertz on your RAM, because it may not do what you think it does, and you're going to pay more for it today than ever in the history of RAM. So if I thought it was wasting money when RAM was cheap, I think it's like a dead end for me. I'd say whatever that's going to cost you, even if there is some kind of performance benefit, my question is, why would you pay that much money just to go that little teeny tiny bit faster? So I'd love to hear what the logic is or what you think is going to happen. It's your money. You spend it how you want, but I would be irresponsible to encourage you to spend it that way, and especially not until about 2027 when prices become more reasonable. I don't think you're going to notice one difference outside of running some benchmarks, maybe, mostly because you probably don't push the RAM that hard to even hit 3200 to begin with. It's not that it runs at 32. When your car has a speedometer of 160, it runs up to 160 if you drive the car that way. But if you're just driving the car around, it doesn't really matter what the top speed is because you're never getting close to it. So again, I don't know how you use your computer. I don't know if maybe you're getting some RAM for free, but I wouldn't go out and buy RAM right now, and certainly not for that reason. I think it's delusional, and I think you're being misled by influencers and people online that are not professional computer technicians. And if I were you, I would ask other professionals, not enthusiasts. Talk to somebody like Doug Betts, talk to somebody like Scott Merrill, talk to people on YouTube that actually do this for a living, that have experience and are held accountable to customers, and find out what their opinion is. It may be very different than mine. On the other hand, I believe we're all going to agree that that's just a complete waste of money. Not that you don't have a right to waste your money. You have every right to. But if you're asking me for honest advice, I'd say don't buy any RAM now, and don't buy it until another year or year six. I'd say at least 15 months. That's likely when things are going to start to reduce. In fact, even Samsung, there's some discussion that they're going to stop making SATA SSDs, which, you know, as far as I'm concerned, good riddance. Who uses SATA anymore? Good riddance. They want to focus other manufacturing on NVMe drives, which I haven't bought a SATA drive in years. So if Samsung wants to get out of the SATA SSD business, I don't blame them. There's no money in it, and it's really obsolete technology now. So if they're going to focus NVMe drives only, I think that's good news, not bad news. Tony says, Carey, my PC and network is not a hobby. I use it for developing web pages. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm not sure why you're telling me that, but interesting. Tony wasn't the one whose question I was answering, but Al says he wants it for gaming and timings. Yeah, so you'd probably be better off buying a better video card. Unfortunately, the way they're writing the games right now is pretty sloppy. So we're getting games that they're requiring you to spend more because they don't want to spend more optimizing their code. Also, when it comes to gaming, your skills as a gamer aren't going to improve because your frame rates went up and your timings went up. I mean, you're going to be good at a game in the same way, you know, regardless of what computer you're on. In the same way that if you cook food and you have the nicest pots and pans, do you think you're cooking food better? Because if, in my opinion, the way I see the world is if you're a professional chef or you're just really into cooking, it won't matter what pots or pans. You can come over to my house and use my pots and pans, and it's going to taste delicious. And how insulted would you be if upon winning a game, someone said, well, you only won because you opened your wallet to outbuy me? And I don't know. To me, that's just not the way sports, any sort of competition should be played, where you can just buy better equipment than your competitor, because now you're not playing on a fair playing field. But it's your money, and I don't know how much you've got budgeted for time and for expenses on this luxury of being able to sit at home and play games. So if it's important to you, I mean, I don't know specifically what advice you would have, what I could give you. It seems like you've already made up your mind and you already know what you want. So what is it? What is it you're not sure of? I don't understand your question. And you're like, I want to bump it up, so bump it up. You already know what you want. I mean, why stop at 3,600? Why not go to 6,000? Why not? I mean, how do you know where to stop? How do you know how much money is too much? The benefit of that is so minor for the amount of money you're going to spend. It is not a good deal. you're going to spend this much just to get this much back. And if you want to, go right ahead. It sounds like you've already got it figured out, so I hope you find it worth it. When you do it, let us know if you had to do it again, if you would recommend it. I'd be curious, sincerely. Bikeman said, I still have one PC in the house that still uses SATA. Yeah, that's why Samsung doesn't want to make it anymore. You know, it's not a very popular item. It's not, people still buy them, but people are mostly buying NVMe nowadays, and they want to shift all their manufacturing to NVMe, quite frankly, because memory is getting expensive, and there's a higher demand, and there's going to be a shortage. Whereas on SATA, there's no demand, and there's plenty. So they just want to say, you know, I don't know that they've officially made up their mind, but they're certainly considering it. And if I was Samsung, I would have done it last year. I wouldn't have waited till the shortage, but foresight, you know. All right, let's see what else we got in the chat room. If you have questions for me, such as the RAM question, feel free to ask them. And I may have to ask questions back in order to fully understand what we're driving at, and I'll do my best. And I'll always be honest with you, even if it's the answer you don't want to hear. I'm going to give you the answer I would give you if you were paying me to give you advice, which real customers do that, just so you know. And I'm treating you the same as real customers who pay me. No differently. I'm not talking to you any differently. I'm not asking you any different questions. I'm going to be straight up and honest with you. May not be the answer you want to hear. That costs more. Can you just tell me everything's going to be okay and this is a good investment? It's really not a good investment, and it's not okay. What if I paid you more? Oh, that's fine then. Yeah, sounds good. It's a joke. All right. Ron says, my new GMK Tech G3S came with a 500 gig SATA drive. I populated the expansion port with a 1 terabyte NVMe, but it would make sense to, would it make sense to clone the SATA and use the slower SATA for storage? Well, maybe. I don't know. I can tell you that reinstalling Windows from scratch on a new machine is never a bad idea. And so before you get too settled in with that new computer, if you're putting a new drive in it anyway, why not just do a nice clean reinstall of the OS and drivers that you do yourself, so you don't have to worry if the manufacturer is using a different version, like an international version of Windows, or has put outdated drivers on it. You can go and make sure, and then you're good from that point. Now, when it comes to the old drive, you could put it onto a USB adapter and use it as external storage. It won't run any slower through USB than it's already running inside of the computer. But if you keep it inside of the computer, you're adding to the heat. Now, it sounds like you're talking about a SATA M.2 drive versus a 2.5-inch drive. But regardless, it's just the interface, the size of it. It's otherwise the same exact performance and everything else. And SATA was obsolete, 6 or 7 years ago in my world. So to hook it up through a $10 USB to SATA adapter, even if it's an adapter for an M.2, they're like $20 for those adapters. You won't lose any performance. And just think of it as having a 500 gig flash drive. That's what I would do. And I would do a nice clean install of my OS. I would not clone it, because you're not the one who put it on there. And if you look through enough YouTube videos and enthusiasts online, they'll sit there and complain about how terrible manufacturer defaults. Of course, for these people, everybody except them does everything terrible. Windows 11 is full of bloat, and manufacturers don't install right, and AI sucks and all this other stuff that they're completely clueless about. But that's okay. That's okay. They're allowed to be. You might align with those values. I don't. I align with logic and experience, not about this is different and I don't like it, or if I don't do it myself, it's not good enough. Actually, that one I probably subscribe to. Anyway, that's what I would do if I were you. Thank you for asking the question. Jonathan Fells joins us, says hello. There's Jose Lopez, also with a $1 super chat. Thank you, Jose. Eddie Casanova joining us from Philadelphia. Mark Gaines in Northern Ireland saying hello. Here in the chat, there's Sean Skinner and Luke Greenia. I also see, of course, Mara hanging out in our chat room, Richard DeFries, Ben Laird, and there's Andy joining us in the chat. We were just talking about Andy and the Nano KVM Pro, which he appears to have now working. Thank you for the update, Andy. I did not know that it wasn't just the time synchronization that was broken on the Wi-Fi connection. Now I know. Viper joins us and says hello. And Tony Aindos says Merry Christmas. Thank you, Tony. Back at you, my friend. Xander Vanderhoven saying hello to everybody. And who else? Spider-Man the Hero says hello. Scott saying hello. And Jim Kinney joining us saying hello. Arnold Albert says, can you provide the link to download, then use VIP CD to activate? Basically, the link to download is included in the email if you go to VIP-URCDKEYs and you place your order, you're going to get an email within about 2 to 3 minutes. So if you want those links, when you pay for it, you get those links. And they are official links that take you directly to the source at Microsoft. They're not sending you to a file sharing site or anything sketchy or, it would be very unprofessional. So there's no reason for you to ask me for the link. That would be entirely redundant, because once you buy your VIP URCDKEY license code, the email that contains your license code contains the link to download. And that's the link I highly recommend you use, because if somebody were to provide the link to you, the link probably leads to 8 different versions of Office, but that activation code only works on one specific version of Office, just like those versions of Office each have their own unique activation code sequence. So if you're trying to circumvent the email, or you're trying to game the system in some way, or you think you're getting a heads up, you're probably just making your life miserable. There's no reason for you to overthink this. When you buy the product key, within about 2 minutes, you're going to get an email providing everything you need. So if you don't buy the product key, there's no point in you having that stuff, because you didn't pay for it. Now, it's not a big deal to go and find Microsoft Office. I mean, there's plenty of legitimate ways that you can get that, even direct from Microsoft, that are right at Microsoft.com. I'm not trying to keep it a secret from you. But what I am saying is that you want to make sure you download the right version, and depending on what you buy, that version may be different according to your purchase. So there's not a one-size-fits-all Microsoft Office. It's not like Windows, where you have all these different versions of Windows built into one ISO. Office often has different ISOs and different product key activation sequences that are ultimately it's not good for your computer. If you download the Office and you download the wrong one, you have to take it out. But if you know Windows, you know that when you uninstall things, it still leaves stuff behind. So why clutter up your system and your registry and your Windows directory with an application you have to uninstall and do it twice, when you can just do it once and be done with it? Do it right the first time. That would be my advice. That's how I do it. That's how I recommend you do it. Brian Weber says hello from sunny South Florida. Welcome in, Brian. Shamim Kajveras joins us. Welcome in, Shamim, joining us from Sweden. Dustin Fuller says hello. Paul1961 says hello. Edward Bass joining us saying hello. Gary Tatum wants to know, if I was going to build a mid-tower PC today, what case would you choose? Well, I'll tell you what. Probably the biggest ripoff in computer parts, and people can talk about RAM prices and solid-state drives and CPUs. I think the biggest ripoff overall is computer cases, and just overall. And the reason I say that is, as I look around my office and I see all the computers we've built, some of them are so big and heavy. Some of them are so tacky. Some of them are so limited in different ways that didn't matter to me at the time I built it. But now I look at them differently and I say, well, it's all show. There's really not a whole lot of robustness options. And as a result, there is not a single case I have today that I would recommend. Bottom line is, there isn't one. Because as these computers age, the first thing that becomes completely worthless, the thing that nobody wants, is your case. If you try and sell your system online, generally speaking, nobody cares about your case and nobody cares about your liquid cooler. They really don't care, at least in my experience. They want to know, what's the CPU, what's the motherboard, how much RAM, how much storage, what video card, what power supply, at what price. Because you know what they're going to do when they get it? They're probably going to take it out of that god ugly case that you thought was so great. They're going to hate it. They're going to say, you know what? Whatever your offer is, I'm going to offer you $100 less because I'm going to have to gut this thing and throw the case in the garbage. And it doesn't matter what case you buy, that will almost always be the case where people have different taste. And it's very rare because there's so many cases, the odds that you pick a case somebody else likes. So the best case I would recommend for you is the one that you like. If you're building it for somebody else, put it in the case they want. If you're building it to sell it later, save your money. Don't put it in a case. It's like painting a house before you sell it. Whatever color you paint it, the new buyer is probably going to have to repaint because they don't like what you picked. So that's why when houses go up for sale, they're usually freshly painted all white. Just everything's white. Because if they leave the house with this green room and this purple room and this blue room, and you're like, what am I, living in a rainbow here? What's going on? It's a way for the buyer to say, look, this is tacky. This looks like you got a toddler room. We don't have any kids. We don't want rainbows on the walls. We don't want clouds painted on the ceiling. We're going to have to undo all this. So we're going to take that off of the price of the house. And yet these people spend extra money and time and effort to do that to their house. But the likelihood of any buyer seeing that and going, oh, I like it, it's possible, but it's pretty rare. So there's no case I recommend today. There isn't one. It's really your individual taste, and don't expect anybody else to appreciate whatever time and money you spent on it. If it's for you, you do it for you. And understand that when you go to sell that, it is very common for somebody to ding you on the case and say, well, whatever price you want, take $100 off of it because that case has to go in the garbage. Even though there's nothing wrong with it. Kind of hurts your feelings a little bit, but that's how it is in the market. They don't want your case, usually. But I appreciate the question. Randy wants to know, do I think fiber optic cabling will move into homes and fully replace Ethernet cables at some point in the future? No, I think, well, that has started to happen in popular areas. I think the future is wireless. So I think, this whole idea of thinking about running cables and stringing things together is old-fashioned. The future is wireless. That's my opinion. Andy says that Nemo looks like a really nice small form factor computer. Yeah, I mean, this is insane performance. I mean, if you look up the AMD AI Max 395 Plus or the Plus 395 CPU, just that alone, that's like $800 of a CPU right there. Plus, it's probably got a ton of I/O on it. I mean, I see a memory card, I see a Type-C USB, which I would assume is going to be USB 4, maybe version 2, that could do 80 gigs. I don't know, but I don't have any USB 4 version 2 accessories yet. Chicken and egg kind of a problem there. Yeah, all of these, if you see the AI Max 395 or the 370, they usually have different performance modes. So you've got performance mode at 120 watts, balance mode 85 watts, silent mode at 55 watts. All I can tell you is my experience on that CPU is mind-blowing performance. Absolutely mind-blowing. What did Ferris Bueller say? Because people are like, hey, these are pretty expensive. Try and build one, and you'll see these are a bargain. If you build one with similar specifications, assuming you could even get that chip, which you can't. But if you were to build like a desktop version of this, it'd probably cost you a good 30 to 40% more just to match what's in this box. But when Ferris Bueller was talking about having the Ferrari, he's like, I have to say, it's a great experience, something along those lines. Highly recommend. What is he? If you have the means, I highly recommend you pick up one. Pick one up. It is exquisite if you have the means. This is one of those, if you have the means, oh man, I can already tell you from experience from other machines we've looked at with that chip. I don't know the price on this yet, and I don't know how it's equipped. It's not uncommon for these to already have 128 gigs of RAM in them. That's how insane they are. Tony says, my way of thanking you for your support you gave me over my networking issues. Oh, right on. That's cool. Appreciate it, Tony. Al says, no, I'm not buying any RAM. It's not worth it. Thanks. I appreciate your advice 100%. Right on, Al. We'll save you some money. Charlie in the chat says, I've had several beefy Windows 11 laptops, and they all have to be reset daily after the desktop apps stop working. Since upgrading from an 11th gen Intel with Windows 10 to a 12th gen with Windows 11, any advice? Charlie, if I'm completely honest with you, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, it sounds like you're doing something differently than everybody else. And I only say that because that's not normal. What you're experiencing is, I've never heard anybody say that about Windows 11. Or the only times I hear about problems like this is someone is, they're either putting in software they're downloading that they're not paying for, or they're using the computer in a way it wasn't intended, or they're overclocking it, or they haven't built it correctly. If they've modified it, they modified it incorrectly. If you get a brand new laptop from any manufacturer, if you have any problems with it, you should be returning it back to the manufacturer under that warranty. If the laptop is so old that it's out of warranty, and now you're having problems with it where before it was never a problem, it sounds like something's failing. And at that point, I'd have to have it on a bench to diagnose it. I wouldn't be able to guess or even offer any advice at this point, because the information you're providing is so vague as to barely even qualify as a legitimate question, in the sense that we'd really have to analyze so much information. What's the make and model of laptop? When did this problem start? Show me an example, demonstrate it to me, and then we can go back and find out. Because by simply reinstalling Windows, you're not learning anything. I generally don't like to reinstall Windows unless I'm in a press for time and it's just faster than the diagnostic, because you don't learn anything. So if you keep making the same mistakes, if every time you reset it, you go back to your old ways and you just keep breaking it again and you're never learning, and you're just in a vicious cycle. So the first place I would start is with the end user to figure out what you're doing differently to have such an unusual experience. And that's my first honest suspicion, is it's not a computer problem. On the other hand, without any of the other information, you know, if it comes out that this computer is 15 years old and, you know, what do you expect? You know, that's just going to come with age at some point where the machine simply isn't what it used to be. And that's also a possibility. Parts can go bad, RAM can go bad, storage can get corrupt. There's a lot of different parts that can cause this kind of a symptom as well. But if someone's saying it's always consistent and it's happened from one laptop to another laptop, that sounds like the person. To me, that's where I would start, is end user education. But again, something like that, I'd need a lot more specifics. But I appreciate the question, and it is not normal. I think if you talk to anybody that you know and ask them if they have that experience, they'll tell you no, they've never had that experience. And that either identifies there's something very uniquely wrong with your hardware, or you're using your computer in a very different way than everybody else is. So one of those two things is going on. That's about what it sounds like from that brief description. I know people don't want to hear that, but I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not telling you to hurt your feelings. I'm trying to help you. So please be open-minded that, yeah, it may be something you're doing. At least if you're sincere about wanting to fix it. Not that you're denying it, but I'm foreseeing that this gets pushback, and I'm just telling you honestly. Sometimes we have to educate the user to fix the computer. I'm not saying in this case, I'm saying it's possible. Andy says that Nemo is on sale now for only $1,900 with 128 gigs of RAM. I'm telling you, I know $1,900 sounds like a lot of money, but you try and build a desktop equivalent of this and see what the price is. You put 128 gigs in and you get a high-end desktop processor that matches this one, plus the Wi-Fi, plus the Ethernet, plus all the ports, plus the power supply, plus the operating system, plus the cooler. And all of a sudden you realize this is a bargain all day long. That's my opinion anyway. Charlie wants to know, what do you think of the HP Z2 Mini G1A and AI Max Pro with ECC? Right now they're on a fire sale. You know, I haven't seen many modern HPs this year, so I'm not familiar with that, but we can look it up and take a look. It's a HP Z2 Mini. Let's Google that. HP Z2 Mini. In general, I do like the HP Mini overall. I like them better than Dells and Lenovo's, for whatever that means. Called a G1A. First link says flash sale at HP. And it's bringing me laptops, which we weren't looking. It's not going to be a laptop, right? It's a mini PC. It's a workstation like this. It's about the same price. Here's a link from CDW. Share the page here. What does it look like? They look pretty similar. I didn't see any USB ports in the front for some reason. Maybe I'm just not seeing. Why are there no USB ports up front? One of the things these machines should have is a ton of I/O. So where is it? I mean, is it only on the back, or is it like maybe at the top? Why aren't they showing it in the photos? Well, that's suspicious. I have no idea how this is equipped. It's just the front. You don't get to see the other side. It's like someone's selling me a car and I only see the driver's side. I gotta wonder, is there damage on the passenger side? Or are you looking at photos of a new house and there's always the curtains are closed and in the bath area of the bathroom. Open those curtains. Let me see what that shower or tub looks like. It's probably got black mold and nasty. I'm just very suspicious why certain things aren't shown. Let's go to Amazon. Maybe we got some better photos here. So $1,700 ain't bad. Although this is a 385. It's a little less, and it's only a 1 terabyte drive. $3,200. Here we go. Same. Oh, wait a minute. So there's some ports on the side. Just one USB-C, one USB-A, and a headphone jack. Not sure I'm a big fan of that, because that would either be the side if it's laying flat or the top. Here we go. Finally. I gotta be honest here. I'm not too impressed. We got these really bizarre DisplayPort outputs. We've got some Thunderbolt on there. We've got a Kensington lock. These are just 10 gig per second USBs, which are pretty slow. But you know, this is HP. It's probably built really well. But if you take a look at the Nemo, for example, if we type in, what is this? Is it on? Nemo AI Max Mini PC. What do we have here? So this is like $1,000 less than that HP. And then if you look at the photos, look at all the ports we have right up front, regardless if you have it vertical or laying flat, right? See the blue USB ports there? Those also may just be 10 gig per second, and just HP doesn't make theirs blue. And then if you come around the back, I mean, you're gonna 2 terabyte SSD instead of a 1 terabyte, which is what the HP had. That's all they're showing us. Let's look at our specs. Wow, they even sell that with up to an 8 terabyte SSD. Woo! That's over $1,000 just for the SSD. You might say, well, the HP is having ECC memory. I don't know how important that really is these days. Some people that are a bit old school still think that's important, but with error correction and fast processors, it's not like, I guess it depends what you're using the computer for, but most people, that error correction happens, you're not even aware of it. That's why ECC isn't really needed these days unless you're dealing with like a server like Google and you're handling thousands of requests every second around the world. Then that sort of error correction occurring could really slow you down. But on a personal computer, I can't see wasting money on ECC. Bluetooth 5.2, Wi-Fi 7, USB 4, and USB Type-C. Memory, talk about 3600, this runs at 8000. Two USBs 2s, 3 USB 3s, and then how many USB 4s? It's got a lot of ports. That's the whole idea on these workstations. They should have a lot of ports, and it concerns me as well that the HP was very limited on its ports compared to like Minisforum. Minisforum, you can have 5 monitors hooked up to the darn thing, all at 4K 60. That's insane, using that same processor. So it'll be interesting to see how the Nemo compares. But I don't know. You know, the HP is going to have probably better support by comparison because they're a much larger corporation. On the other hand, because they're a much larger corporation, you buying it to them is you spending a nickel. Like, they deal in so many millions of dollars in sales, especially from large corporations, that this big sacrifice that most of us would feel like we're making to make this investment, they don't appreciate that because to them it's nothing. So if you're looking for that sense of appreciation of your business, you're probably not going to get it from Dell, HP, or Lenovo because they're dealing with large mega corporations that buy thousands of computers without a blink of an eye. Smaller companies like Nemo, Minisforum, they much more appreciate your business and often give you better value for the dollar, but you might find maybe HP support is better, but you might find that the value of a Minis Forum or Nemo, for example, is a higher value. They do have excellent support, by the way. It's just sometimes there's a time difference between, you know, where they are and where we are that could lead to an extended amount of time than compared to calling and speaking to somebody during normal business hours, which typically you can do with HP, but you might regret doing it. It's really hard to say. I have nothing against HP. I do feel like, though, you're paying an HP tax. But in my experience, those little HP minis are built very, very well. And I have a few of the elite minis myself. I think I have 4 or 5 of them here. I don't use them because I have more powerful machines than that, but they work 100% solid. They do run hot, but that's not necessarily a problem. It's just an interesting observation. I've got an HP Elite Desk 13900, and yeah, it's like having a race car and going, oh, for some reason it runs hot. Yeah, I can't imagine why that is. How do I cool it? Maybe don't race it so much. Anyway, I don't have any problem with them, but I think there's better value to be had from a name brand that isn't charging the name brand tax, what I would call it. The Greenia said, I've been nothing but super happy with the Project Zero build. Not one regret buying it. Well, it was the right build for the right person. So when we built Project Zero and I made the selection of the case and the colors and all of that, there's only one person in the entire internet community that watches my videos, one person, that said, well, no, 2 people, because Mark Gaines decided to build one. So 2 people out of the entire internet community that vocalized a desire for that exact build out of thousands of people that watch these videos. That's why I'm saying it's not that nobody's going to like your choice, but the odds are they're probably not going to like your choice. At least when you go to sell this thing and say, well, I spent this money on the case. And you go, yeah, I don't like the case. That's the first thing that's going. But usually everything else, the power supply, the motherboard, the CPU, that they want to keep. And if they don't see value in it, they don't want to offer you it. To them, that's more work they have to do. But if you find the right buyer for it, then that's a different thing. But finding that right buyer when there's so many different opinions. I mean, maybe you get lucky, or maybe you just gotta deal with a lot of people questioning and asking questions, you know, say I'd like to buy that, and they want to know this, they want to do that. You could spend 3 months answering emails endlessly from people or taking phone calls from people just to find that one buyer. And then you got to wonder, is it worth it to sell it for, you know, maybe it's worth it to take a little less from a different buyer that has the money and wants to buy it today, but they don't want that case and they're going to ding you for it instead of give you more for it. Or is it better to just hold out and wait till you find that buyer whose values align better with yours or preferences align better with yours? But then the longer you have it, the more it depreciates. Is it worth holding out for it? That's an individual decision you have to make, but just know what to expect is all I'm saying. That's pretty typical in the marketplace today with computer cases. It's not usually the case with processors and RAM and storage and motherboards and video cards and power supplies. Andy mentions this is cheaper if you buy it directly from Nemo. Well, if you sell at Amazon, you have to pay a commission to Amazon. So in most cases, I would expect buying it direct from Nemo, or anything buying direct instead of buying it from Amazon is probably cheaper. Some places don't sell direct. But yeah, I mean, somebody's got to pay Amazon the commission, right? So that makes sense. Ulu said, Carey, I checked the website for the mini PC. It says 96 gigs of video memory. Is that shared with the DRAM? I don't believe it is. Let me Google it just to make sure. And I think that's because of the CPU. I think it's all built into the CPU. I think the CPU itself has the RAM inside of it, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll just ask, is 96 gigs of RAM on the AMD Strix 395 dedicated to the GPU or shared system memory? And let's see what answer we get here. On an AMD Strix Halo, such as this machine here, the Ryzen, here, I'll show the screen. On an AMD Strix Halo, like this exact processor, system with 96 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM, that memory is unified, but it can be dynamically allocated. So a portion up to 96 gigs acts as dedicated video RAM for the integrated GPU. So it's difficult. You can dedicate some of that RAM to the video card versus allocating, which is an interesting choice of words here. Well, the rest stays as system, all managed by AMD software for flexibility. It's not strictly separate. The GPU can access the whole pool, but benefits from dedicating it to make it great for a large language model. So this is where we get into sometimes the nerdy technical stuff that for a lot of people, it's going to go over their head. I know for you guys, this is probably fully understood. But allocated memory versus dedicating memory is not the same. So what they're saying is you could have this pool of RAM and you can tell the BIOS, or you can maybe even in the AMD software, I want this much of my system RAM to go to my video card, and it will perform as though that RAM were on the video card. There'll be basically no performance difference than if the RAM was built onto the video card. That's why it's no longer relevant to ask that question on modern systems like this, because they don't do it the same way, and it's no longer the deficit you're accustomed to thinking it is. And that may be another reason why this comes with 128 gigs of RAM, so that you can be generous dedicating it to the graphics card, especially if you're using it for like a large language model where you want that RAM on the video card for AI processing purposes. On the other hand, if you're using this computer for other purposes, you may want that RAM dedicated to the system for those tasks. So it gives you a lot more flexibility at a much lower cost with fewer things to go wrong as we advance and evolve in the technology. Welcome to 2026, my friends, because this is the new way of things and it makes complete sense. So it's sort of irrelevant. Now, if you're a kind of person that says, I want 128 gigs of RAM on my GPU and 128 gigs of system dedicated memory, well, I want a flying saucer. I want a flying car. We're not there yet. At any price, we're not there yet. What you're asking for is a server. So you'd be, on the home market, this might have qualified as a server 15 years ago with performance that it has today. But at that level, if that's what you're looking for, it's not on the home market at all. You're ahead of your time if that's what you're looking for. Not that you said either way, I'm just trying to foresee what the follow-up is. Let's see. CM Ritchie says, do DOCSIS modems come in rack mountable options? The ones you rent from ISPs get hot. What are some cooling options? I've never seen a DOCSIS modem that's rack mountable ever. not even in large corporations. The power company, their modem was a box the same as, very similar, not the same, but very similar to what you and I have. My business clients, they have separate modems. They don't mount in the rack, they sit on top. Usually they go on top of the rack or on one of the shelves. They sit upright. They run hot because they're intended to run hot, and if you cool them down, they'll often run worse. So again, there is this common belief from 10 years ago, or even from the beginning of computers, that we're battling heat and heat is bad. But when we start getting into modern computers, if you look at, for example, a Generation 5 NVMe drive, it doesn't reach top performance until it heats up. Your car engine, in a similar way, is very inefficient when you turn it on. And until your engine warms up, you should not be slamming on the gas pedal and beating on that engine and revving it up while the engine's cold. That's a great way to advance wear and tear much earlier than normal, and to have an ultimate engine problem. So the Mini Cooper, when I got it, was pretty interesting because it has an on-demand water pump. Usually water pumps just run with the engine. The people at Mini Cooper figured out a way, which may be normal today, but back in 2005, I'd never heard of such a thing, where essentially the water pump stayed off until the engine got up to temperature before it would start running the cooling through it. That way your engine got hot fast and that car was ready to go. And then you don't want it to get too hot. So hot is what we want on modern fast equipment. If you don't want it to be fast, then you can expect it to run cooler. If you do want it to run fast, you need it to get hot oftentimes to even run at those speeds. If it's getting too hot and it's a modem that's provided by your ISP, then I would call the ISP and say you've got a bad modem. But just because it's running hot with modern modems, Wi-Fi 7 routers, they're supposed to run hot, and cooling them down can ultimately slow them down. And I want you to just remember, this technology is evolving, and the way things were aren't the same anymore. Now, if you're running a modem from 10 years ago, probably shouldn't be running hot. But that modem from 10 years ago doesn't run as fast. The faster it goes, the hotter it gets. And sometimes it won't even reach top speeds until it gets to a certain temperature, like a Generation 5 NVMe will run better when it's hot. And the worst thing you could do is to cool it below that. Same with your car engine. You could put a massive cooler on your engine, and if your engine's not operating at peak temperature, you're losing efficiency, emissions go down the toilet. If you ever have to take your car through emissions, like we do here in Arizona, they tell you, do not turn your car off while you're waiting in line for the emissions check. They want your engine warm because they want you to pass the test. If you shut your engine off thinking, I want to save gas and I don't want my engine to overheat, there's a very good chance that if you've been waiting in line long enough that you start that engine up and it's back to being inefficient, it's too cold, you will fail the test. Just telling you, heat is not bad. And in some cases, it's the exact opposite. It depends on what it is you're comparing it to. So if you're having a problem with the modem, you would call your ISP and ask them to replace it or fix it. If the problem is in your head, that you're just not comfortable with how hot it is, we got to get you through that, man. You've got to move on. You've got to understand this technology has changed, and that heat is there for a reason, and it's running as designed, and it's not the modem that needs repair. The end user is the problem here. Sometimes I'm going to hit you with a deep psychological thought here. Sometimes we're struggling to solve a problem in life. Doesn't have to do with computers, just something that you just quite can't seem to find a solution for. And it blew my mind when I was taught this. And thankfully I was taught it, or I still might be going around in endless circles in this, trying to solve a problem. Are you ready? Let me make it dramatic. That's not going to work. Never mind. I'm going to get a close-up of my face. Are you sitting down? Sometimes in life, the problem you're trying to solve is the fact that you believe there's a problem. And when it occurs to you, when someone raises your awareness, this isn't a problem. It never was a problem, and this is why you're struggling to fix it. Then the fix is for to get you to get it through your head. It's not a problem. You think you have a problem, but you don't actually have a problem. So how do you fix that? And I'm dead serious. When I was taught that, it made my life a lot easier when it finally made sense to me that the only problem that I was struggling with in life was the fact that I believed I had a problem that wasn't really there. I want you to think about that. Because I could have used that advice a lot earlier in life. CM Ritchie said, if the ISPs are doing away with plain old telephone service line, they can use VoIP or SIP phones through the ISP. Yes. They've been offering that for years. It's always been a thing for 15 years. Do all-in-one, this is from Al, do all-in-one coolers need to be run at full speed for better cooling? I have mine set to DC and it's at 4240 RPM. Typically, you want the cooler running at full speed, 12 volts all times. You don't want it to slow down, you don't want it to speed up. That's why there's often a separate all-in-one header on your motherboard that runs full speed. Now, oftentimes in a modern motherboard, a nice one, you can adjust that back to a fan setting. So fans, you only want the fans to run faster and louder when they're needed. So the fans that blow through the radiator of an all-in-one cooler, you want those to speed up and slow down as needed, but you want the pump to be running full speed at all times. However, there may be a cooler out there that's come up with their own design. So you're best to look into the documentation that came with your cooler. You can Google it, go online and pull it up, because they will often specify in the documentation the importance of that. But I wouldn't assume every all-in-one cooler always follows the same rules, because otherwise they start suing each other. So if there's an all-in-one cooler out there that says, oh, it's fine to let it run at varying speeds, you'd only know through the documentation. But more likely than not, it wants 12 volts full-time. Don't alter it. You want the liquid moving through the hoses and through the radiator, and it's the fans that will speed up or slow down as necessary. And that's why there's an all-in-one header on motherboards for that reason. And that's, if you're wondering how are they different, if you plugged your fans into that without changing it, your fans would run full speed at all time, which would probably be really annoying and drag a lot of dust and insulation into the computer, causing it to run hotter, because you're basically created a vacuum cleaner that's on full speed all the time. It's probably annoying to listen to it all day. But a pump doesn't have that problem. A pump doesn't get quieter when it's slower. There's no reason to not, that I can imagine, to run a pump at anything other than full speed at all times. But again, there could be a manufacturer out there that has a novel design that I just don't know about. But that should be absolutely stated in the documentation, because in most cases, they don't want you to call them with support because you plugged your all-in-one cooler into a fan header and now the fluid's not moving fast enough and you want to know why the cooler's not cooling your CPU. So it's almost always very importantly stated in the instructions so that you don't have to call them for that misconfiguration that you installed it incorrectly. It shouldn't be hidden. You shouldn't have to really look for it. It should be very conspicuous, very obvious in the documentation and how important that is. And again, without knowing the make and model of your cooler, I couldn't tell you, but you can Google it and pull it right up, and I'm sure it's probably going to tell you leave it on full speed all the time. There's no reason to slow it down. Brian Weber said Unify has a DOCSIS 3.1 modem that's rack mountable. Well, what's interesting about that, and it doesn't surprise me, I've never seen one, and it doesn't mean it's compatible with your ISP. So when I called my ISP and I was looking for a modem I always call the ISP to ask them what they recommend. Because if I don't want to rent the modem, I want to buy my own. That means if I have a problem with the internet and the ISP says, hey, if it's your modem, we're going to bill you for this. You know, if you're renting the modem from us, we guarantee it, service it, no problem. But if you provide your own, if the problem is your modem, not only can we not help you with it, and this support call ends, but if we send somebody out, you'll be paying for that visit. So if you're willing to accept that responsibility and you want to get your own modem, then you know the UniFi may be an option for you if your ISP will even be compatible with it. And I would check with your ISP before making such a purchase, because I'm sure anything that says UniFi on it, it's expensive. But that's interesting to know that they make it. Rick Lakes joins us and says hello. There's Ron Hillier saying hello. Welcome in, everybody. Ron says, Carey, tell me a story. I'm sure there'll be some before the end of this broadcast. Paul said, I had that problem. My modem got too hot and the Wi-Fi portion quit working. So Paul, which chip on your modem is the one that was getting hot? The reason I'm asking this is over and over online, especially from hobbyists and enthusiasts, they're just making an assumption. They don't really understand what happened. They're not forensic analysts who can identify precisely what the problem is, and they conclude very bombastically, as though it's fact, that their assumption of correlation to the problem is in fact what really happened. Now, I'm not saying 100% of the time they're wrong, but probably 85% of the time they're completely wrong. What I have witnessed actually working with electronics is there's a reason why it was, if your Wi-Fi was failing due to heat, it probably didn't have anything to do with the Wi-Fi. There was probably another component that failed on the board, and after it left that component, if that component had gone bad, then that component would need to be replaced. And the symptom of that component going out was that your Wi-Fi went down. But when you're working on electronics, if you've ever done any electronics work, what you'll see online, especially these days, is we now have these thermal cameras that we can attach. Basically, you can buy them handheld, or you can buy something that like plugs into the USB-C, and you pull it up on your phone, and you can look for where you just move it around the circuit board and look for where it glows red. That is usually the source of your problem. Now, that doesn't mean that the consequences of that part glowing red are the problem, right? That's what you're experiencing, are the symptoms. I might be short of breath and think I've got issues with my lungs, when in fact, maybe I've just got high blood pressure. Could be the same symptom, but an entirely wrong diagnosis. So somebody says, well, I sit down, I feel better, so it's got to be my lungs. No, that's why there are doctors. Those are the people you want to listen to for facts. But when somebody concludes, especially a hobbyist or a home user, what they believe the problem to be, I want to see the component. I want you to show me. And they can't. Most people can't even identify a transistor from a capacitor, from an integrated circuit, from a... You know what I'm saying? They don't know. They just go, well, it got hot and stopped working. Okay, but why? Was it that way since day one? Heat is a consequence, typically, of a component failure. Typically. It is not the cause of the problem. It is a symptom of a problem. So to blame the symptom instead of the cause is completely 180 degrees twisted from how an electrician or a repair person would be fixing that. If you said my Wi-Fi goes down because it gets hot, my first thought isn't to change your Wi-Fi card. No. My second thought isn't let's put a fan on it. That's ridiculous. If it needed a fan, it would have come with a fan. So something failed. Now, we don't know why it failed. It could have been a manufacturing defect. It could have been something that happened in shipping. It could have been a power fluctuation that you didn't even notice that was enough to cause that component to fail. There's so many variables that without a proper forensic analysis, you're welcome to guess if that makes you feel good, but you're guessing, period. You're just guessing. And that's not likely the real source of your problem. The source of the problem is what was causing the heat, not the heat itself. Just for whatever that's worth. So when you read or watch other people online, especially hobbyists and enthusiasts, talk about how they had to replace this because it was running hot, they don't really have all the information. On the other hand, you will see actual repair work being done, and they will show you the failed component. And if you watch those kind of videos, like what is it, Electronics Repair School has a YouTube channel here, he'll show you how he identifies the failed part and what the symptoms are. And they're usually two different things. Things you wouldn't, a non-technical person or a hobbyist wouldn't identify as the source. They're looking at the symptom, almost universally. Just, I want you to, when you're watching content or reading content online, I want you to consider who's providing it, because a lot of times the information is wrong. It's not necessarily malicious and willful. It's just they truly believe it, but that doesn't mean it is right or that it's factual. You could truly believe I'm 10 feet tall and 4,000 pounds if you want to, but that doesn't make me 10 feet tall and 4,000 pounds. So I just want you to be aware of it. It's not ridiculing anybody. Somebody thinks I'm ridiculing. I'm not ridiculing. I'm trying to help you. Should I coddle you and say, oh yeah, I'm sure it was here. Is that what you want to hear because you don't want to learn anything? Because I'm here to teach. I'm here to make you understand the technology better and to get you on board if you truly care about having accurate information. But if you're here for your feelings and you're looking for an AI sycophant to say, oh yes, great idea, you're right, you've come to the wrong place, right? It's not why I'm here. I'm not here to ridicule anybody. And if you're pushing back against education, I don't think the problem is with me. You just don't want to learn, and you take offense to any sort of assistance to help get you to a proper understanding. Because if you had that proper understanding, it would have been stated. So the fact that it wasn't stated, you know, in the way that I would state it. So in other words, if I didn't know what a problem was, I would say, I believe this may have been caused by this. I wouldn't say it was absolutely this unless I knew. And when you deal with people that work in this industry, this is how we speak. So if you're not in the industry and you're a hobbyist and you think you're on board, I'm telling you, you're not. This is just not. There's an outside view and there's an inside view, and I'm giving you secrets of being on the inside. And if you're pushing back thinking that's ridicule, well, I've just wasted my time. I don't want to ridicule anybody, but I'm also not going to sit here and let somebody be unaware that there are red flags in the way that they're speaking that they should be watching out for when they listen to other people too. That's all. It's a learning opportunity. Taffer says an NZXT Kraken Elite has options for pump speed. That's interesting. And there you go. There's an example of a manufacturer who's doing something their own way. Again, I don't really understand what benefit there would be to slowing the pump down, because they're not usually noisy either way. Maybe it's being green with power, you know, that they can say, hey, we're going to sip less power and slow the pump down. But at least here in America, that would maybe shave off fractions of a penny. So I don't know. It may be more of a political stunt, an economic, an ecologic stunt than it is an actual practical thing. I don't know. See what I said there? I don't know. I'm assuming. I am correlating, but I could be wrong. And when I know something is a fact, I will tell you this is a fact. There's a difference. You got to listen to the words. Brian Reber said, I work with some people that always find solutions to problems you don't have. Yeah. Wayne Ellison joins us and says hello. Paul said it overheated from the venting being plugged. The provider told me it was overheating, so I cleaned the vents. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, we talk about the importance of blowing out the dust and debris from a computer and why it's mostly an futility and a waste of money to change thermal compound. In most cases, if a client comes to me and says, hey, my fans have been starting to get really loud and my computer's feeling warm, what's the first thing we're going to check? You got to know me by now. We're going to blow the dust and debris out of it. We're going to open it up, look inside, see if the heat sink's plugged up. We're not generally changing thermal compound ever, unless we're changing a motherboard or changing the CPU or the cooler. And more times than not, what you had was you had a heat problem, but it wasn't a heat solution. What you had was a ventilation problem. And the symptom that you associated with poor ventilation was that you had a heat problem. So you've already corrected yourself here. You had a ventilation problem. And the consequences of the ventilation was that the system was not operating optimally. And it really had nothing to do with the heat. It had to do with the ventilation. And by simply clearing the ventilation out, like a lint tramp on a clothes dryer, maybe your clothes are taking forever to dry and no one ever taught you to change that, clean the filter. Or maybe inside of your car, your air conditioner, when you turn it on, it smells terrible because no one ever taught you to change the cabin air filter. So you might say, wow, something's wrong with my AC because it smells really, really funky. And it turns out it really wasn't the AC at all. It was your air filter. So that's what I'm talking about, right? Ventilation is one thing. Ventilation is not, it's just not the same way of saying, I had my Wi-Fi go down because it went too hot. There's a critical piece of information that if it were me explaining it to somebody, like I wouldn't do that to a customer. I feel it's very misleading to speak that way. I would say, you have a ventilation problem. We've cleared the ventilation and everything should be fine. I wouldn't even, if the customer said, well, what does the ventilation do? I'd say it helps it run cool, but there's nothing wrong with it. You can do this yourself. Maybe every 6 months, get a little can of compressed air or one of those air guns that you can get on Amazon for $60 and just blow through it. And you can just call me when it happens again. It's not a big deal. But that's not a repair. That's just preventive maintenance and pretty much needs to be done on anything that involves airflow. Like I've got a ceiling fan on right now. So if I start overheating, it's not anything necessarily going on inside of me that needs to be fixed. I just need to turn the fan on. All right, anyway. Those details matter. Technically, they matter because if we're talking about symptoms and saying it's the cause, they're two different things. Usually the symptoms and the causes are very different. Ron Barnes said I had to turn off Malwarebytes browser guard on Chrome to stop the pop-up of you have an ad blocker installed. Yeah, there are some websites that'll do that. Not all websites. But if they notice any ad blocker at all, they'll prevent you from going to the site. And Malwarebytes does include an ad blocker. But Malwarebytes also says you can turn off the ad blocker for those specific sites, not just turn it off entirely. And that way you don't have to worry about it. Because I personally leave the ad blocker on. But if I go to a website that I want to read that says, we're not going to let you read this unless you turn off your ad blocker, I go to Malwarebytes and I say, just turn off the ad blocker for this website, but leave it on for everywhere else. And Malwarebytes will build that list up for you, and to the sites you go to regularly, while also keeping you protected from the sites that you don't go to as often. Terrell Cockerman says, I just looked into that Unify UCI spec sheet. It says it's only for residential, except for Cox. And there you go. We have Cox cable out here, so that I guess wouldn't work for us.
Danielle Emberly says, when I was young, I was working with an electrician where I thought a motor was hot. First thing he did was spit on it. He then says if it doesn't spit back at you, it's not hot. Well, that's some fancy diagnostic tools he's got there. El Perez joins us, says hello. There's John Paul Bacon saying hello. We have Black Cat with a $5 super chat. I hear Samsung is leaving consumer SSD and RAM markets next year. Should this change my PC buying behavior? I'm going to guess that you just joined us. So we talked about this in the very beginning of the video. And I would encourage you to go ahead and rewind the video and see this whole discussion we've already had. Ultimately, the bottom line is it's really up to you. 2026, things are going to get more expensive. And Samsung's only discussing it. As far as I know, they haven't said for sure, only that they're considering it. And I would not base any future decision on gossip and rumor. So I would just recommend, if you're going to buy an SSD or RAM, regardless of who makes it, just know the prices are projected to go up and are not expected to fall back down until 2027 at the earliest. Now, those projections are conjecture. Nobody can really know. But if you have any concern about it, and again, it doesn't matter who makes it, the prices are going to go up. That much, it seems pretty well set in stone. You never know. Things could change. But to the best of my knowledge, Samsung is only discussing that. They have not committed to it, and reacting to it this early would be premature. And if it's just specifically Samsung you're worried about. But regardless, Samsung's not alone in the sense that prices are going to go up. And it doesn't really matter if they make it or not if it's sold out. Right? If you're trying to buy RAM and you can't get it because it's just not available, because it's getting bought up, then the supply isn't there. And what supply you might find will have a much higher price because of supply and demand. Regardless, doesn't matter if it's Western Digital or Samsung or Micron or Team Group or OLOY. Supply and demand is supply and demand, and it doesn't vary by manufacturer. And prices are only projected to go up until 2027 at the earliest, from the projections from the so-called experts that do the market analysis that I trust with the information. And at the end of the day, it's really a decision for you to make, because regardless if Samsung goes in or out of the business, it won't change anything. Nothing's going to change. Prices are still going up. Supply is still going to be dwindling. That's why prices are going up. And manufacturers may, anybody who's smart in manufacturing is going to manufacture for who's spending the most money. So if I'm in business making RAM and I'm just selling it at the farmer's market, get my little kiosk set up. I got RAM over here, farm to table. And a guy says, listen, I own a company. How much RAM do you make? And I'm like, well, I just make it out of my house. I make, 50 pieces a week. How much could you make? Like if you just flat out made as much RAM as possible, how much could you make? I could probably do 100 pieces a week. Okay. If I buy all 100 pieces from you for the next year, so you don't have to come to the farmer's market and you don't have to sell to these people walking around, and I'll pay you no problems, no scams, business to business. Would you want my business? Duh. So I'm going to pack up that farmer's market. I'm going to say, bye guys, you're not going to see me for a while, and because I got a big whale over here, and I'm going to take care of that whale. That whale's going to take care of me. These little fish are all well and good, but they're not going to pay the bills or lead me to the success that whale will. So anybody who's got any sense of real business strategy would be foolish to turn away a big whale. A big whale isn't going to be there forever. So we get that big whale taken care of. It might take a year. And then maybe 18 months later, I'm back at the farmer's market. And then maybe somebody goes, hey, you left us for the big whale, so I'm going to boycott you. I don't care.
What do I care? I just made 1,000 times more money than I would make from you. So walk away. What do I care? Again, if we're talking about business and value, who's offering more to the other? A business transaction should always be reciprocal. You're receiving a benefit of the product and value that you see in the product. The manufacturer is receiving a profit. And then that transaction's over. We're done. You got what you wanted. I got what I wanted. You benefited. I benefited. We're good. So if there's somebody offering more benefit than you and that offends you, it's not my fault. I'd be an idiot to not take that deal. And when I come back, if you're still emotionally distraught and you're like, I'm going to boycott you, go ahead. What do I care? So when you're in a position of influence and power and you're making buying decisions for large corporations and a company does that to you, then you taking your business somewhere else actually means something. But you as an individual, you don't have any power or authority in it. So you can either participate or not. They don't really care. I mean, I'm just telling you that's how it is, because there's not much loss. If they lose your business, they don't lose much. But if I lose the business of the whale, I mean, that could be the difference between me opening up a whole factory and becoming a new brand name versus just always staying a little farmer's market guy until I just can't do it anymore or the market interest fades. It's just common business sense. There's nothing evil about it. And if you ever ran a business, this wouldn't need to be explained to you. This is, if you want to run a successful business, if you want to be successful, just saying, you don't need an MBA degree to figure that out. Anyway, Black Cat, thank you for your $5 super chat. I appreciate your question. Phil Stodd said, guessing is not troubleshooting. Guessing can be a part of it, right? It can, like when I'm troubleshooting something, I'm guessing from my experience where to start, right? How do I know, should I start at the power supply or should I start at the CPU or the motherboard? It's a guess, and it's based on experience, where I say, oh, I've seen this problem before, and usually, more times than not, it's caused by this component. But I'm guessing. But you got to start somewhere. There isn't necessarily a universal troubleshooting method for all computer problems, because otherwise you could end up, testing 99 out of 100 things before you get to the thing that's the problem, that's number 100. Versus using experience and a little educated guessing. And educated guessing, it's not like throwing a dart at the wall. Educated guesses in some cases are some of the best troubleshooting methods in my experience. Not always, but it only takes a few times for that to be worth the effort. Why do I have a disdain for hobbyists and enthusiasts? Why do you think I have a disdain for them? That doesn't make any sense to me, because, listen, I think there's what I'm saying and what you're hearing are two different things. If I'm telling you that you're a street performer, okay, whatever it is you do, let's say you dance, and I tell you that this type of dance works well on the street, but it likely isn't going to get you into any ballroom dancing competitions, right? You're not going to be good enough. You're not going to be up to that level of a ballerina that's professionally performing on stage. Not likely. But if you say, yeah, but I'm not a ballerina, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying there's two different worlds. You cannot say as an enthusiast that you live in a professional technician world. You do not. And I can tell you, because I have spent time in both worlds, most enthusiasts have only spent time as hobbyists at home and haven't held jobs and accountability to paying work with 10,000 hours of paying work of doing the repair. Because
what's interesting is for most, it's one or the other. If you spend 10,000 hours doing something that you're getting paid to do, the likelihood that you want to do that after hours on your own time as a hobbyist or an enthusiast, highly unlikely. Now, it may be possible you had 10,000 hours in 1980, but unless you're working on equipment in 1980, it's still not really, you're not keeping up in the sense of what are the demands today. And I'm trying to bridge the gap. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but I'm trying to make sure you understand you're in a different lane and different rules. If you're somebody who enjoys playing football and then you get signed in to play on the NFL has rules you have to follow that have serious consequences, and you're paid depending on your performance. And if you don't perform well, you're going to lose your job. But just because you enjoy playing football, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't compare yourself to the people in the NFL. They're up against stresses and demands and pressures, and even the opposition being a lot tougher than what you're dealing with, whatever it is you think you're dealing with real world consequences that can affect their livelihood. And on top of that, even their consequences off the field that can affect their livelihood because they got belligerent and drunk somewhere that goes out in the press and it ruins their career. As a hobbyist, you have nothing to risk. You can do whatever you want, play by anybody's rules, and make it up as you go, and then tell everybody how experienced and educated you are. But that's not something you can apply to yourself. You cannot apply your own trophy. Look, I won this trophy because I'm so good at my hobbyist activity. I awarded this to myself for how good I am. It has to come from somebody else. You have to be, if I want to be Sir Carey Holzman, I cannot just assign that to me. I have to have that assigned to me by somebody else of authority. So when you're a professional working in an industry, you have to meet these expectations. And if you've been doing it, for 10,000 hours or more, there's a big difference between what a home enthusiast user does and what a professional does. And I suppose if there was any problem I had with home enthusiast users, it's the complete ignorance that this other side of the world exists. There's no acknowledgement of it. And it's like, you do know, right, that people go to work and get paid and are held accountable and responsible, and their whole living depends on meeting certain benchmarks. If they say they're an expert, it's because they've been assigned that title from somebody else. They didn't just give it to themselves. In this industry, in the real world, when you're working and you're presenting a resume, and you say, I'd like to get a job here, and they say, what qualifies you? And you say, I'm an expert computer technician. What makes you an expert computer technician? Well, I have a computer at home and I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Thank you for coming in. You hear how ridiculous that sounds, right? So as long as hobbyists and enthusiasts understand that they're not trying to say, well, I'm doing the same thing. You're not. Most of you are not. And most of you have no idea because you've never done it. And that's okay. Just be aware of it. Just acknowledge you're not under those pressures. You don't have that level of experience, and you're just doing this for fun. That's great. I encourage it. But these aren't equal. These aren't the same thing. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm saying they're extremely different. Please acknowledge it. And that lack of acknowledgement, that's where I have a problem. And it goes with anything. If somebody thinks that, I don't know, they just want to see the world the way they want to see it, regardless of the way the world is, I have a problem with that. It's like there's a deniability, there's a delusion, and it's like, it's just not. There's an expression, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, all right? So yeah, that's the most common thing I see, are people that they talk like they have authority and experience, when in reality, compared to a professional, it really isn't. And you'll see it a lot on car channels here on YouTube. You'll see the garage mechanics and the hack jobs they do, and oh, here's a tip. You ever trying to get out a loose bolt, just get a big hammer. And I'm just like, oh.
And then you watch a professional mechanic who's been doing it for, decades. Watch how they get the loose bolt out. They've got better tools, more experience, and they don't work as hard. You can follow whichever one you want. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anybody doing anything themselves. But it comes with a different set of consequences. Very different. One, as an enthusiast, has 0 consequences. It only affects you. As a professional, your consequences affect other people that could then come back to you and cause you to lose your means of earning a living, to have to find another job, or to not get the promotion that you were hoping for. There's real world consequences in the professional world that don't exist in the enthusiast world. That's all. And all enthusiasts have to do is acknowledge it. Just go, well, I'm just an enthusiast. If I go to a doctor and I say, look, I think I know what's wrong with me, I'm going to preface that by saying, I may be completely wrong because I'm not a doctor, but from what I read online, what do you think the doctor's going to do the minute he hears those words coming out of my mouth? His eyes are probably going to roll in there. Okay, let him say what he wants to say, because the doctor's not going to change his mind, right? The doctor's like, why don't you, it's interesting that you have this theory, but how about you just let me do my job? And, maybe you're right, maybe you're not, but that information doesn't help the doctor one way or the other. And well, if you're wrong, too bad for you. If he's wrong or she's wrong, medical malpractice lawsuit. Consequences. Brian Weber wants to know, will lifetime RAM warranties be void now that some companies are leaving the consumer business and all stock is now allocated to the AI companies? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict what's going to happen. But if you read the warranty, it'll tell you that so long as the RAM is made, that they will replace your RAM with the same or better or equivalent. It doesn't say whether or not they're selling to consumers. The fact is that the way that I have read these RAM warranty claims is that, like, if you've got some DDR2 RAM with lifetime memory, they don't make it, there's no equivalent to send to you. So lifetime is usually called a limited lifetime because it's not going to be forever. They just don't have it. When it comes to when they sell to consumers, there's a person in the business called an actuary. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to assume based on your question, you don't know this. What an actuary's job is to average out the number of expected return units and to order extras for that case. So let's say, for example, ASUS makes a router. ASUS doesn't actually make routers. ASUS designs routers, and then they send those design plans off to manufacturers in China for bids. And then the manufacturer in China who has the lowest bid is probably the one that's going to get the job. And ASUS will say, we need 10,000 units. Well, how did ASUS come up with 10,000 units? How did they decide how many units of this new router that's never been offered before, how many do they need? How many do they need to order? Because the more you order, the cheaper it gets. There's economy of scale. So if you order too few, they're going to cost more to make. You're going to have to sell them for more, and you might sell out sooner. But if you order too many, they'll be cheaper to make, but if they don't sell very well, you're going to have all this money in inventory that's just not moving. So that's where an actuary comes in. And so the actuary's job is to look at the sales performance of previous models in recent years and the percentage of average warranty returns, because ASUS isn't going to fix your router. ASUS is going to replace it. So the actuary might, probably not using a pen and paper, but they're going to calculate out. They're going to look at the analytics of previous sales and number of returns, and they're going to project, based on our recent analytics of previous models, we replaced an average of 7% of them. Let's just make a number up. I don't know. Could be high, could be low. So for us to fulfill all of our regular suppliers with a normal amount of inventory of routers, we need this many routers to fulfill just the average amount we sell every month. On top of that, we need another 7% for potential warranty returns. So
even if ASUS says a year later, we're not going to sell routers to consumers anymore, they still have this inventory, and all of that was set in place at the time of sale specifically for that purpose. But what if this router, what if they had a bad batch and that 7% is gone? Now what do you do? ASUS would likely, in that circumstance, send you the latest new model at no expense to you. That's probably the cheapest thing they could do. So what if ASUS, like we can play the what if game all day. It's like a little 4-year-old going, why? And you tell them why, and then they want to know, well, why about that? Why is the sky blue? Because of the atmosphere. Why is there an atmosphere? Like, you can play this game like a 4-year-old all day long. So there are certain questions that are completely pointless because they may never amount to ever being reality. And I'm not worried about lifetime warranty on RAM, because how often have we ever seen bad RAM? On this channel, since 2008, 2009, when's the last time you've seen me with a bad stick of RAM? It wasn't that long ago, but the time before that, I don't even remember. It's so rare. Who cares? And every time I've ever sent RAM back, I've gotten the replacement, regardless if it was Team Group or OLOY or Corsair. Didn't matter. I don't think that's going to change, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll have to wait and cross that bridge when we get to it. I wouldn't be worried about it. Just the fact that you would have bad RAM to begin with is unlikely. Hopefully we all have something we do for a living. We have careers. And I would hope in your career you're very good at what you do. And I would hope that if somebody told you they could do your job just as well as you do it because they just work at home, that you would feel the same thing I'm feeling, which is a bit of insult and a bit of delusion. Because if that were true, why aren't they working? Why are they doing it? You know what I'm saying? Like, if they believe to elevate themselves, no one else elevated them. They elevated themselves to your level and said, we're the same because I said so. If somebody did that to you in your career, the thing you consider yourself an expert in because you've been doing it for decades, paid by a boss and held accountable for your work, how would that make you feel? Oh, you're a photographer? I have a camera. Look, it's built into my phone. See, I'm just like you. Oh, you're in a rock band that has a top 40 hit? I play guitar. Yeah, it's the same thing. That's great. I'm glad you play guitar, but it's not the same. It's fine. It's great. Appreciate we share a similar interest, but not at the same level. That's okay. It's good. Unless you try to elevate yourself like we're the same. We might be. We have several members in our community here that are working computer technicians, not used to be, current working computer technicians like Mark Leibowitz. And different experiences too, where some people are more like system administrators, some people are more hardware, some people are more Windows internals, networking, that kind of thing. So just because you're in the industry, it could be a different facet of the industry that I know practically nothing about, and they can teach me all day. That's great.
And I probably go and watch their YouTube channels so I can learn that stuff. Because I want to learn it from a professional. I don't want to learn it from an enthusiast. I mean, if I have a mild interest in it, it might be interesting from an enthusiast perspective. But if I'm like, I'm really serious about pursuing this as a career and I want to know what to expect. One of the best examples I can give you, there's a YouTube channel called Jake's Tech. I think I can probably pull it up here. And probably the best example I can give you is for you to see it with your own eyes. So if you go over to Jake's Tech, and he's going to tell you what a day in the life is like doing this work professionally, he's probably doing more in one day, just in a regular 8-hour day, than you will do in 2 or 3 months. And whether or not he gets promoted or what future work he gets is going to be dependent on the quality and time, how long it took him, and whether or not he got the job done right the first time. And the kinds of problems he has to solve are problems that enthusiasts would never have to solve. I don't think you fixed any ATM machines that went down, did you? And you can imagine how devastating that could be to business that requires an ATM machine, right? I mean, time is ticking and money's being lost. Do you know how to fix an ATM machine? Because I don't. So even though he's in the business like me, he's in a different facet of it than I'm doing. So I enjoy watching his videos because I love hearing about the stories of the kind of trouble tickets that he has to deal with. And then I appreciate the fact that I don't have to deal with some of this stuff, like the group policy settings and such. All right, anyway, beating that horse into the ground. Let's see, back over to the chat. Mark Leibowitz said, I'm honored to be mentioned here. Well, we love having you here, Mark, and I really appreciate and respect my peers, like that person Jake, or Doug Betts, or Scott Merrill, or even Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To in England. We all sort of have the same accountability and the same pressure with the same risk and consequences. And the vast majority of viewers that we have are just interested in it. And part of that interest is to explain, to make it important, what you're not being told by other enthusiasts because they don't know. Who else is doing this? Who else is trying to bridge that gap? Because I would love to see an enthusiast move into becoming professional IT. But I don't want you to think you're going to be doing any of those enthusiast activities in the real world. You're not going to be overclocking or putting in liquid coolers or dealing with RGB. You're not going to do any of that. You're not going to be replacing thermal paste. Not in the real world. Nobody, let me rephrase, I'm not going to say nobody does it, but what I mean to say is it's so uncommon that in my experience, in my entire career working at corporations, I never once replaced thermal paste to ever solve a problem. Nor did I do it for any reason. It's just not the way it works. But if you just live in a world of YouTube and Reddit, you would think that this is a normal activity. It's nothing normal about it. When that thermal paste is applied, it's meant to be on there for life. And when you actually measure the difference from one thermal paste to another, there's really almost zero difference. How long that thermal paste will last before it dries out, that's what can make a thermal compound more expensive. Like, what's that stuff called? Something not. Can't remember the name of it. I wouldn't buy it. It's a complete waste of money. And the worst people in the world for that product are the ones buying it. So if you're an enthusiast and you're constantly taking your machine apart and you won't leave it alone, then you should be putting the cheapest thermal compound available because you're constantly cleaning it up and redoing it. But if you just want to do it once and you want to be sure that that thermal compound is going to stay like moist or not dried up for the rest of the life of that computer, then buying that $35 thermal compound makes sense. But again, in the business world, there's accountability to expenses. If you're doing work that's wasting time, that you're being paid for your time, you're probably not going to be there very long.
If you're changing out parts with more expensive parts because you like Noctua, it ain't gonna work. You're gonna lose your job. Because if they can get a $7 fan that gets the job done, then you're gonna use the $7 fan. The Noctuas are for the enthusiasts, generally speaking. When you go get a job in corporate America, you're probably never gonna see a Noctua fan. And if you do, it'd be one or two. It's not gonna be like industry across the whole business. There's always exceptions to this, but I'm saying just overall, there's enthusiast stuff and then there's the professional stuff. And I can't help but wonder that if it's good enough for a professional, why does the enthusiast think they can do better? I don't get that. But it's your freedom to spend your money to buy things that you believe are superior. Maybe you're right. But regardless, that's just not how the world works. And at least if you're doing it for a career where you're held accountable, we have to deal with budgets and scale. So we're not just buying one Noctua fan, we're buying, 10,000. Then you have to pay the people to replace those fans, so you add that to your cost. For what? Why? Because it moves more air? Who cares? That's all I'm saying. So two different worlds. Cannot stress that enough. And I just want the enthusiasts to acknowledge that. That's all I want. And the fact that so many think that that's the only way the world works, that's the part that I get hung up on. Can you blame me? I've been taken to task for things I see enthusiasts sit there and boast about. And if I did that, I wouldn't be in this job anymore. That's the truth. And I think it's beneficial if you're an enthusiast to understand you're not dealing with the same things and the same pressures and the same consequences. There's nothing bad about that, but you've got to know it's not the same, right? All right, enough of that. We're just about 2 hours here. So, and again, this isn't meant to ridicule anybody. I'm trying to drive a point home, right? I'm trying to give you examples that are undeniable facts that apparently are being ignored for some reason. And I want to just state it out there because for the people who never thought about it, I want you to think about that when you're reading articles online or watching videos. Who's the information coming from? Is this a journalist who's never worked on a computer in their life, but they write for Tom's Hardware? Because they're hiring a lot of people now that don't know what the hell they're talking about. They clearly don't have any experience, and they clearly don't understand what they're writing about. Why is Tom's Hardware doing it? I can speculate they're probably a lot less expensive to hire those kind of journalists. And as a result, I don't trust Tom's Hardware at all anymore. This has happened 3 or 4 times where they published just completely false information that wouldn't have happened if the author knew what they were talking about. And if that's how Tom's Hardware wants to run their business, they have the freedom to do that. But if you're just assuming because it's coming from Tom's Hardware that you're getting accurate information, I'm here to tell you, you should be questioning that. They're in business to make money. And apparently they've decided that hiring people for less money to produce more content regardless of accuracy or any technical verification, it generates the same clicks and the same money, so there's more profit for them. So until we start being aware of this and stop clicking on that stuff, that behavior is going to keep getting worse and worse. And we're going to see it more and more, and I want you to be aware of it. And he says, hobby computer stuff and corporate computer stuff live in different worlds. Absolutely. That's all I'm saying. But when the enthusiast has no concept of the corporate world, and therefore it doesn't exist, I'm trying to water that plant. I want that plant to grow. And so long as this isn't mentioned to the enthusiast, as long as this isn't driven home, then they continue to basically live in a contrived perception that isn't matching the reality, and it's a choice. And it may not be a choice if you didn't know you were making that choice. So I just want to raise your awareness to it. And then, maybe the corporate world doesn't matter to you. You're like, I'm never going to work in the corporate world. I'm just going to be an enthusiast. Well, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But then you also can't tell me you're an expert at something because you decided it. Somebody else has to decide that. That is a role or a position that is assigned to you from someone else in authority. You don't get to call yourself an expert. It doesn't work like that. If you went into a courtroom as an expert witness and the judge asked you what makes you an expert witness, and you said, well, because I'm a hobbyist, I'm an enthusiast, you're dismissed. Don't waste the court time. Andy appears to be talking about his continued mini PC addiction. Phil Stodd said, I was asked by a new employee what I was looking for when I was trying to troubleshoot a problem. I said, I'll know when I find it, right? I'm always interested, you know, when I talk to Doug Betts or I talk to Mark Leibowitz or I talk to Scott Merrill, like, what are the problems you had to solve this week? What have customers called you to fix? And I can't get enough of that. And I always need to know the solution. It's not my customer, it's not my problem, but I have to know. So like when Andy was having trouble with the Nano KVM Pro, I'm helping not just to help Andy, I'm helping to continue to educate myself. And because it's such a new product, all we can do is guess, like, you know, try this or try that and let me know what happens. And when Andy comes back and says, hey, I did this and it fixed it, even though it wasn't my suggestion, it was his, I'm not offended by that. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that experience. If Mark Leibowitz wants to share an experience that he dealt with a printer or a mini PC or a difficult customer that has nothing to do with me, I love that because it's real. It's not Mark's issues he's trying to solve. It's his customers that are paying him. And I'm interested in what kind of work he's been getting lately. I'm not interested necessarily in what happened years ago. What's been going on this week or the last time since we've last talked? What have you been working on? What have customers been calling? Because things tend to go in, there's trends. Someone reached out to me in email and they were having a problem with one of the latest Windows updates. And they said, this update installs, but then it says it's not installed and it wants to keep updating. I can't remember which update it is. It doesn't matter. And I just Googled it, and yeah, some people are having this problem, and Microsoft is aware of it, and Microsoft will issue another update to this update next month, and it'll take care of it. And this person writes in and they say, look, I'm sure Microsoft will probably update this in the future, but do you have any tips for me? I said, well, you can try this or you can try that. You know, you can download the update individually and install it. I already did that, didn't work. Well, you can go to Windows Update and then you can do the repair Windows Update option. And what it will do is it will replace all of those Windows files that could be corrupt, but it'll leave all your data, it'll leave all of your programs, no harm in it. And it'll probably take a while for that to run, but then when it's done, from all reports I'm reading online, it has fixed the problem if you don't want to wait. And he said, no, I'm concerned about imaginary problems in the future that might occur because I did that. Okay, well, that's where my support stops. I've given you a fix that I believe will work, that you specifically asked for, but it's not the fix you wanted to hear. So be it. Has anybody else in the chat room had an issue with a Windows Update that wants to keep installing as of late? Because this person made it out like, well, if you Google it online, all these people are having it. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people in the world. I'm sure you could type in any imaginary problem or real problem and conclude that it's common because you're finding others with similar issues. But I haven't heard anything from my own customers And I haven't heard anything from you in the chat, so I thought I would ask sincerely, does anybody have the problem with a Windows update that keeps, just the most recent one, I can't remember the knowledge base article, but it keeps wanting to, it says it's installed, but then it just keeps offering it. In my experience, that's usually a corrupt file somewhere, or something's missing in your Windows operating system. And again, Microsoft has acknowledged this, and they're saying they'll address it in the next patch. So you can just sit idly by and wait. But this person was wanting to know, was there something I could try in the meantime? And then when I told him what to try and that didn't work, I told him the next thing to try and he won't do it. And we're done. It's frustrating to have somebody ask, and then when you give them the answer is not up to what they wanted to hear. That doesn't make them a bad person, but for somebody just trying to help, I can't help but wonder, why did I even try? If I would have known that about that person, I would have never responded to their email, because I would have realized if they're only going to accept the answer they want to hear, I don't want to help them. That's not what I do. They can pay me for that, but I'm not going to do that for free. That's where the support stops. Now, if they follow those steps and in fact their concerns were right, that it's going to cause problems, I will help them resolve those problems too. I'm not going to abandon them. But they're worried they might have problems at some point in the future, and no matter what those problems are, it'll be in their head, no matter what, that it was because they followed these steps, even though those steps probably had nothing to do with any future problem. How do you deal with somebody like that? You try and offer assistance, and it's not good enough, and you do it for free? That's frustrating for me. It's so disheartening, because I really believe this would have fixed the problem, and he doesn't want to listen, and he wants to imagine problems that don't exist, and he's also going to further imagine those problems will be caused by following the steps. If I'm offering you the steps, they're the same steps I would offer to a paying customer, and that's what they're not getting through. And they don't have to, and then I don't have to help anymore. I go, that's it, you're wasting my time now. It's disrespecting me. Andy says, Carey, our voyage with the Nano KVM Pro will continue. It's had its highs and its lows, but it's a great cooperative learning experience. I agree. I have no regrets on buying the Nano KVM. I had some concerns, but most of my concerns have been alleviated at this point. And I'll be interested to see the redesign of it next year. And I'll probably buy one, even though they're visually identical. One's more plastic, just to see, It's not a bad KVM. It's just maturing. Just needs time to mature. And we knew that by pre-ordering it on Kickstarter, we were going to get an immature product. And if you've got that attitude, this can be fun. But if you're relying on it and it's important to you, you probably don't want to buy it yet. Speaking of which, the GLINet Comet should be out, or in the mail. I expect I should have a tracking number tomorrow. And if I don't, they told me reach out to them. So if I don't have a tracking number by tomorrow night from GLINet on the Comet Pro, you better believe I'm not going to waste any time. I will kick an email off and go, hey, can you give me an update on the status, because I don't have a tracking number. Where am I at? I don't want to postpone this any longer. It was supposed to ship no later than December 15th. And it's the end of the day, December 15th, with no update. I will not hesitate to send that email out immediately, because the longer it takes me to ask, if I'm lost in a queue somewhere, then the longer it's going to be before I get it. Hopefully, I'll get a tracking number tomorrow, and I won't have to go any further than that. And then we'll have that to review here as well. Doman 2000 said he's got two systems. KB5072033 rollback with a 0x800F0991 error. No real worry as on unsupported systems. What does that mean, unsupported systems? Are you saying that you have Windows 11 installed on a system that doesn't support Windows 11? And that's why you're not worried that this update isn't working, because it maybe this update applies to and I didn't ask the person who asked the questions if they were running Windows 11 on a supported computer or if they bypassed it. Ironic if that's the case from somebody who says they're worried about consequences, but I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest. Josh Kinder said, if Carey ever helps me, I'd never question it. I would just say thank you for the help. Well, more importantly, it's okay to say, hey, that didn't work. But don't project it's not going to work. Don't do that to me. Just, I offer you the advice, try it, and if it doesn't fix it, tell me. And I'll stick with you until we see it through. But what I won't do is play a game of, you know, I want you to tell me what I want to hear. ChatGPT will do that. ChatGPT will tell you whatever you want to hear. It's all free. Have at it. But if you want the truth and you want to get to the solution fast and no dilly-dallying, I will see it through to your solution so long as you're cooperative. And I do that for free. People can email us and ask us their questions, and we will do our best to give you the answers. But they may not be the answers you want to hear. I didn't say that I was ever going to give you answers you wanted to hear. I give you the answers that are more than likely going to solve your problem. That's how I make a living. And to do it for free is very frustrating because the people who pay me for it never give me that kind of grief. Go figure. But regardless, we're not going to let a few people ruin it for everybody. I want you to know that goes on behind the scenes all the time. And if I charged for it, it would probably never happen. You should think about that. Think about the psychology. So yeah, if the systems you're having a problem with that update on are unsupported, but you've got Windows 11 on them anyway, that actually explains a lot. And that's going to get worse before it gets better, right? As Windows 11 continues to evolve and rely on those things that all these enthusiasts say aren't important and you can bypass them, just watch and wait and see what happens. This is a problem that will become more frequent and more obvious. And it's going to lead to a place where it will be undeniable that running Windows 11 on an unsupported system is no longer feasible. We're not there yet. But it's not a light switch, you know, it doesn't turn off overnight. It'll just start to fade out. That's why we don't use Windows 98 anymore. I can't tell you the last day I used it, and I can't tell you the last day the average person used it, because it didn't happen overnight. It just faded out. Forgotten. Mark Gaines said he hasn't had any problems with Windows updates. That's good. I haven't either, and nor has any of my clients. That's why I'm asking you guys, because the number of clients I have versus the number of viewers I have, they don't compare. I get a lot more data from the viewers. But yeah, if you're running Windows 11 on an unsupported system, that would explain it. And that's going to be more common. Just so you know, more of that's coming. And I don't know if that's the case with the person who wrote in. I didn't ask, but I'm not gonna pursue that any further. All right. Well, listen. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for all the memberships and friendships. And I'm sorry that there are some viewers who feel like getting the honest answers is hurtful or insulting. That's the way you're hearing it. It's not the way I'm saying it. I can't control what you hear, but my intention is always to be helpful and to be honest. And if you're not accustomed to that in the world you live in, I don't know what world you live in, because I learned pretty early on in a career, in a job that pays me, that you're paid to do a job. You're not paid to feel good. You're not paid to not hurt your feelings or to tell you what you want to hear. So when I'm coming across, I'm talking to you like I would talk to somebody I've hired. Say, you need to do it this way. You need to get on board. This is the way you need to go about the process. And if you think that that's insulting to you, well, then you haven't heard a word I've said, which is insulting to me. So unfortunately, that's just some people's way of seeing the world, and communication has to work two ways. You have to understand that my intent is always to be helpful, and if you hear it any other way, then you've misunderstood me. Just so you know, going forward, if you didn't already know that, you should know that about me. But if you need somebody to coddle you and tell you everything's going to be okay, I'm not your guy. I'm the guy that'll tell you, deal with it, you can handle it, I believe in you, let's go. I don't see that as being insulting. I see it as the opposite. That's me supporting you. All right? And that's all I'm trying to do here. It's all meant with friendly intent. And if you guys want to reach out and email us, we always love hearing from you guys. You can use our email address. I'm going to put it right up here on the screen. And if you have any questions about the business or about a particular issue you're having trouble with, you're welcome to email us. It's not bothering us. If you need coddling and personal support, yeah, we don't do that. I'll encourage you, and I believe in you. But that means you have to get up and do it. All right. Obviously, anything channel related, anything business related, anything problem related, please use the email address on the screen to reach out to us. We love hearing from you guys. Again, it's never a burden on us. We love hearing from you guys, regardless. Even if you want to share an experience. Hey, you know, I just bought this thing and this mini PC, and it's been great. It's been terrible. I love it. I hate it. Any of that stuff. We love those stories. So always know that that's open and available, and we encourage you to take advantage of it. Thanks to the contributors today, which includes in our super chat, we had a couple there today. Bob R. renewed his membership. Thank you, Bob. He says 43 months of great content and technical information. Thank you. Well, thanks for getting it, Bob, and thank you for supporting us. Jose Lopez, thank you for your super chat. And Black Cat, thank you for your super chat and your question. Thanks again to Mark Gaines and our friend Buster, Peter Laycock, for their Amazon gift cards in lieu of super chat contributions. You guys are amazing and generous and super cool people, all of you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And for members, we are back tomorrow at the usual time, 1 o'clock. These are videos we make only for our supporters. They are never made public, and it's because of our supporters we're able to keep doing this, rather than, you know, having some big corporation write us a check and tell us what we're allowed to tell you. We're free to be honest and open with no consequence of financial boycotting from any sponsor. We are free of that. Our friends over at VIP-URCDKEYs, they support us here as well, and they support you guys too. So if you're considering buying a product key, and again, you want to make sure you have peace of mind you're buying a legitimate product key, why not support the people that support us and support you, and by extension, show them the support back. It's a wonderful world when we're paying it forward, especially to the people that are taking care of us. So the help that we get from VIP-URCDKEYs isn't just for the channel, it's for you guys, which are part of the channel. And finding a legitimate key seller online that isn't going to scam you or abandon you, I'm telling you, that's not an easy task, finding a company like VIP-URCDKEYs. But me being in business, I have to find something that I can stake my reputation on when I'm building and selling computers to clients. And most companies don't share that with their customers. Never show the customers how the hot dogs are made. But I don't have to follow those rules. It's my channel. I want to share that. Keep it open, keep it transparent. If you appreciate that and you want to see more of it, please support us if you don't already. Because of you guys that are supporting us, that's why we're still here. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you to Mara, of course, for all the work she does with our thumbnails and video notes. Be sure and check the video notes for links for everything we talked about today. This will probably be Friday, if I had to guess. We'll probably save this for next Friday. Monday is members only, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, at this time, nothing is scheduled, so we'll just wait and see what shows up in the mail, and then, of course, I might reach out to some friends, like Scott Merrill, Ask Your Computer Guy, see if he's available and willing to join us. If so, we may have some interviews coming up. Maybe we won't. We'll just have to see how it plays out. All right, that's going to wrap it up. We'll see you. We'll see the members tomorrow, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, bye for now.